someone? Have you ever shared? Do you need someone to always be there?
Hello again. I'm Dr. Hung Vu, and our show is America's Healthcare Crisis. I'd like to welcome you to the second part of our production on stress at the workplace. During the first part, I had the opportunity to interview a nurse working in the ICU and a police officer who were familiar with the aspect of acute stress. I feel it is important to understand the other aspect of stress, which is chronic and insidious. And tonight, I would have the opportunity to interview two professionals who are in different fields. One is in the computer, electronic industry, and the other one is in the construction business. And I'd like to take a minute to introduce them. My first guest tonight is Ken Lee. Hi, Ken.
How you doing, Dr. Hu?
Ken has been with us on a previous show before, and I'm very pleased to welcome him back. It's good to see you tonight.
It's good to be here.
Ken is at the present time a information system analyst.
That's correct.
Working in the Silicon Valley. And Ken has an interesting background in that he was an optometrist before he changed into the computer field, right?
That's correct, yes.
That's great. I look forward to talk to you about the kind of learning experience you have at both fields.
Great.
Our second speaker is Joe Magliulo. Hi, Joe.
Hi, how you doing, Dr. Wu?
How are you feeling tonight?
I'm feeling great.
Good to see you.
Yeah.
Joe is an engineer and works in the construction field. Now, actually, I had an interesting discussion with Ken the other night about the terminology that we use. For the sake of simplicity, we divide the show into the acute and chronic stress. But as he mentioned to me very aptly that in the computer field, even though that you don't deal with life and death, you can have acute stress too. You can lose millions of dollars, right?
Absolutely.
So tell us about the kind of stress you have to deal with now as a computer analyst.
Well, in my role, what I do is I help to design, implement, and maintain production types information systems. Mm-hmm. So one of the stresses that can occur, especially in the area of the maintenance role, is if a production system goes down, production meaning something that's being used to carry on the business, mm-hmm. should it fail, there may be you may be time-bound in terms of resolving that problem. Mm-hmm. A very simple type of example would be a sales order type of information systems where you have a customer who's waiting to put in an order, mm-hmm. and if the system's tied up or it's down for a period of, let's say, a period that he can't wait, he'll go to the competitor. Mm-hmm. And in that case, you've essentially lost business. Mm. So there is really an economic mm-hmm. basis for maintaining this production system rapidly.
Right. Mm-hmm. Actually, I have been in medicine all my life, you know, and of course we deal with sicknesses and health, so I tend to feel that I am under a lot of stress, but it's a different kind of stress that you're under because, again, you can lose careers, you can lose a lot of money, which secondarily can affect your future and a lot of other things, and that could be very stressful. And what you're saying is that you deal with a lot of deadline.
That's correct.
And it's the time pressure is very heavy.
There's a time pressure, right?
Yeah.
Right.
How about you, Joe?
Well, it's, construction business is probably not that much different than programming or, sales business. We have pretty much the same kind of stress. We have deadline that we have to meet. Mm-hmm. In construction, you put in a bid, you have a deadline mm-hmm. that you have to prepare the bid. Mm-hmm. Then, you work a lot of long hours, try to get a bid in. Then that's not where it ends, because if you turn out to be the low bidder, mm-hmm. you're probably going to have more stress because you're not sure if you leave anything out. So, damn you do, damn you don't, Yeah. But it's a pretty tough business that we're in, and competition is so fierce out there. Mm-hmm. You have to do a good job up front and then try to deal with that, afterward. And in our industry, if you ask anybody, you know, what seems to be your problem, you know, what causing the stress, we always saying that you have 3 stress: current project, past project, future project. they all creating stress, you know, no matter what you do. And you finish a project, you still have to deal with some of the issues afterward. And then you're dealing with a current project, try to get it on hand, then you got to look at a future project to bring the business in. And you constantly have that in addition to other stress, of course, you know, the political situation in the workplace, and then dealing with lack of leadership thereof. So
one of the things I have learned is that a very big stress for me anyway has been that things can be very uncertain. In other words, you would like to think that the higher position you have, the more money you have, the more power you have, the more control you have. But I have met with a lot of people who have that power and money and position and all that, and they have more stress than I do, because it's a different level, and you know, it's like it's a catch-22. Things are not under control most of the time. What is your experience with that, the uncertainty of things? Like you can lose a job tomorrow, and you can, even though you know you keep up with everything, if something happens that you cannot control.
Yeah, I think that's a real type of stress here, especially in the Silicon Valley, where as a person working for a large company, your I guess your foresight, or the way you look forward to 1 year. In other words, 2 years from now, you don't know whether you'll be with the company.
Your contract is renewable every year?
It's not so much a contract, but it's just that the way, unlike in previous generations, where if you worked for a company, you did your work, you did a good job, you basically have a lifetime job. Now, just being competent, even excelling in your work, is no guarantee of security. So in a sense, you sort of live year by year. Your focus is a year, because next year you won't be here. Okay, and so that, I think it has a repercussion in the way we do business. We, meaning as a society, is because then we all tend to think short term. Unfortunately, that's the spin-off for this type of stress. Okay, but that definitely is a real stress, even aside from things that you were talking about, just having wealth, fame, and so forth. That's very elusive. But even if you took that away, just being in a position, in any position, it's very elusive to say that you're in a secure job. No one is secure in reality.
Right. And insecurity, job insecurity can be by itself a major stress, because we in a what I call a debt economy. Everybody has a mortgage, and and losing the mortgage can be extremely traumatic. And yet you depend on your job to fulfill the obligation. And I have been in medicine for many, many years, and I feel that I'm doing my job competently. But you can never be sure what's going to happen next, Now, talking about support, what kind of and coping mechanisms, how do you find the kind of support to recharge your drained battery after stressful projects?
Well, one is, to get your mind off of what you've been doing, and to do things that actually rejuvenate you. Things that are exciting, that just, you're just dying to do.
Physical or
physical,
mental?
it could be physical, it could be mental. I guess a catch-all terminology is to get involved in your hobbies, hobbies being something that you enjoy doing. And that sort of takes your mind off of,
What is your hobby?
What I like to do a lot is photography. I like to take pictures.
I see.
Especially nature pictures. I like to do camping. Outdoors. So you get away from a lot of the things that you normally do in a workplace.
I see.
And so your mind just literally can just explode and go its own way.
How about you? You're a good cook, right?
I enjoy cooking sometimes. I enjoy going out playing golf.
Oh, I see.
I
You
think
play golf?
one of the things that a lot of us fail to do is we so engrossed in doing our work, and we think that by putting more hours, longer hours, and stay focused with the job that we do, try to get it done, is a way to do it. But it's not. We got to learn to turn ourselves off at the end of the day. When you walk out that door and going home, you got to shut yourself off. Just like you try, go to work, turn the radio on. When you leave work, you shut it off. You have to learn to do that. And if you can discipline yourself in doing it that way, you can relieve some of the stress at the end of the workday. You know, I tried to do that, you know, over the years, and sometimes I'm real successful at it. Other time I'm not. I get trapped, you know, like everybody else. One of the main things that I try to avoid is never take my work home and then bring the same problem at work home. And at first, you know, I tried to share with my wife about what the problem at work that I have. And I learned very quickly that over a short period of time, like about a month, my wife gets so engrossed with my problem at work, and then we have problem at home, you know. So from now on, you know, I'm not doing that anymore.
That's interesting what you mentioned, because I have learned also is that it's almost impossible to separate the stress at work from the stress at home, because you bring stress from work home and then vice versa. You know, the stress from your home can interfere with your performance at work. So it's really impossible to avoid the stress, which is the way of living nowadays. You know, but I just feel it's so important that we learn how to keep the stress level manageable. Because in my practice, I have seen so many psychosomatic symptoms and illnesses that are purely stress-related. And in medicine, we don't have really a good treatment for that. We're still very drug-oriented, and it's like scratching the surface, you know. So I'm very concerned about the fact that we don't have good ways of helping patients cope with their stress, because they don't have time to understand the circumstances either. You know, nowadays things are very fast moving, fast changing. You don't have time to understand. Now, one of the aspects of work that is very stressful for me is, I guess I can have bluntly say that sometimes I have to deal with the lack of ethics. In other words, to advance in any career, it seems like there's a lot of factors that are not equitable. In other words, you would like to think that if you are hardworking, you have certain values, work ethics, then you can be recognized for it. But in my experience as a physician for 25 years, it's often not the case. In other words, it can be very inequitable. I mean, you were an optometrist before and actually mentioned some of that aspect. Maybe you can tell in general how you feel about that. Because for me, really the thing that is most important is the ethical part of the profession. If people adhere to certain ethical standards, then the other parts of the job will be much easier to deal with. But I don't know how to deal with that, because things are not really, in the real world, the competition is not always fair and equitable.
Yeah, I think having experienced this phenomenon both in two professions, the optometric profession and now in the computer industry or in the business world, I think the story is the same. We have this issue of people who are unethical, who exhibit unethical behavior. But a couple of things to keep in mind here is that ethics is not a black and white issue in many cases. There's a lot of gray areas. What one perceives as unethical it could be ethical to somebody else, and that person truly may believe it's ethical. Okay, and of course, depending on where your beliefs are, it could be be a stress to yourself. If you believe, obviously contrary to what the other person believes. And the only, one of the ways I deal with that myself is, unfortunately, to have to look into this paradigm and say, well, the guy truly believes that what he's doing is correct, and you just have to sort of live with it. I think that to try to achieve utopia, well, by definition, utopia is not achievable, but it is to put sort of undue stress on yourself. So in a sense, not to say to ignore the situation, but in a sense you have to resign yourself to a position and say, this is the best that I can do given the situation as exists today. Certain things are just not on your control. And to constantly belabor the points that I'm very frustrated, it's not under my control. It's not under my control, it's like adding undue stress to yourself.
Yeah. Let me ask you about the medical aspect of stress. I am a firm believer that stress can create a lot of symptoms, physical symptoms. Do you have the same kind of opinion, or do you, I mean, is experience different?
I could absolutely tell you that is I guess in my changing careers, I experienced what the phenomenon that I realized later was called midlife crisis or career burnout. And the stress of being in a career that I wasn't really feeling fulfilled in gave me a lot of physiological stress. I was tired at the end of the day, exhausted. As soon as my day ended, I was full of energy. I mean, it was just, I didn't realize the phenomenon while I was in it. But in retrospect, as I look back, it literally is a very energy draining type of experience. And so there's that physiological relationship right there. Stress and physiological relationship.
Like what kind of symptoms did you experience specifically?
Tired. I'd start off the day, and get up in the morning, be full of energy. As soon as I started working, all of a sudden it was like I've worked 24 hours. Ready to quit. And at the end of the day, as soon as I closed down my work, closed my office, walked out, and all of a sudden it was like a brand new day.
Yeah.
And like I said, I did not understand that phenomenon when I was in it.
What has been your experience? Have you any physical problem with not being able to manage the stress level?
Well, I recently changing a job after being with a company for 24 years. It's a wonderful company. It's, unfortunately, like every other company, go through a period of downsizing, and then the market condition change. They're not flexible enough to recognize the new market niche and change with the conditions. And I was getting a lot of stress because we're not focused. Business kind of slow. I'm not sure if the company going to close shop or not. As it worked out, they didn't. But I gone through a lot of those periods, and a lot of time we jump in and bid a job with no intentions of getting it, just go through the exercise and getting real tired and frustrated, put in a lot of long hours. And at the end of the day, I get so tired, but yet I couldn't sleep. And then it just gone on like that, day after day after day. And finally, I just feel physically burnt out. And that's when I decided to say, well, this is enough. I quit and moved to a different company. And the new company, we have a lot of work. And then it's something exciting, and I jump in and I work. We put in 16 hours a day, and I get physical exhaustions. But then because at first few weeks I slept very well, so it's a different feeling. You feel rejuvenated. At least now you can sleep. But then after 6 months of this 16 hours a day, your body can't take it anymore. So and then again, I get trapped into the same situation. Can't sleep. When you sleep, your eyes shut, but your mind's so active. You're still thinking about the job because you're constantly trying to do the catch up. And it seemed to be this common problem right now. A lot of company downsizing. You don't have enough help. You're doing a job of 2 or 3 people. and you're constantly trying to do catch up. And it's not fair for yourself, but how you deal with it. The only way that I know how to deal with it is taking one thing at a time. And I find out that having a good friend in the workplace that understands your situation and you try to help each other out, try to lift each other up. So when he's down, you try to lift him up. When you're down, he tries to lift you up. And sometimes just by stopping your work, take a little walk around a couple blocks, then come back, and relax, just kind of break away from the normal daily routine seem to help. And sometimes you just literally going to have to say, I had it, this is enough, leave the job early. It's always going to be there when you come back. The sooner you finish, the more stuff going to pile up. So you're just going to have to learn to, shut it off and go home and relax, and you feel better the next day. I think from the working standpoint, you have to do that because when you're physically so tired, you can't contribute anymore to your work anyway. You're just literally there. Your body there, but your mind not there. So why not just go home?
Now, I personally have done different things to resolve the stress. I jog, I listen to music, I do all different things, and they have been more or less efficient in helping me. But lately, I have to say, I want to share this with you, and I want to ask you whether you have had same kind of experiences. That I have depended a lot on what I call spiritual strength. I have become very religious, not in the sense of practicing a certain religion per se, but I have a very strong belief in certain things. And what I call, I'm talking about Buddhism, I'm a Buddhist. So it has really helped me a great deal, and it is much more helpful than anything that I did before. In other words, a lot of times I have certain things I don't understand. That makes me very upset. I don't know why certain bad things happen to me, because so many things you cannot control. You do things, and one of the things that to me has been very difficult in my profession is that I see a lot of patients every day, and they become entities. They're not really people that you remember. And 10 months, 11 months from now, there may be some consequence from something you did very long time ago. I mean, that's, you're talking about, some of the things I read about in the literature that is very frightening, is that things that you're not totally unaware of result in some kind of a malpractice or, consequence along the line that you're totally unaware of. And I have been trying to cope with having a strong belief in that if I have been a good person and I've done my best, eventually things will come out all right. I wonder if you have any kind of coping mechanism similar to that. Well, you go to church, right? I mean,
right.
Actually, you're a regular churchgoer.
Right. Well, from a Christian point of view, it was sort of shared. Well, the viewpoint I take is a lot of times the stresses that you face in life are but temporary, because you look at the long picture, the long haul, and so you say, this is just in passing, and so it's a big picture looks somewhat like what you're looking at in your beliefs. Okay, and that helps to relieve a lot of the stress. But if your viewpoint is very terminal, meaning very short term, there's nowhere else to deal with that stress but right now, and that stress then becomes imbibed.
Yeah. How are you, Joe?
I remember at times, I go to church quite often with my boys, and when I'm in troubles, I do, pray to God, and look up and seek some help from God, because when you're desperate, you cannot find the answer anywhere else. It's comforting to have somebody to turn to.
Yeah.
And and You may not get the answer you want, but at least you know somebody up there listen to you, and you just hope that things would turn out better.
Yeah.
And even though you may not get the result, but you get a comfort that at least you can relieve some of that stress within you, because you can transfer that to God and have God carry that stress for you.
Actually, I was mentioning that because that's one of the aspects of health that we have very poor understanding in medicine, because Western medicine relies very heavily on the proof of physical evidence. They don't believe anything that they cannot see or prove. And yet, in my experience, the spiritual strength and the emotional part of illnesses are extremely important. Stress is an invisible force, and yet it can create a lot of havoc on your physical health and mental health. And that is one area of research that is still very poorly analyzed in medicine, and I wish that there could be more, but again, that's the way it is. So anyway, I believe that we are again running out of time. Half an hour seems to pass by so quickly. I really appreciate your presence here tonight, and it's always good to see you. And I have done this show for 3.5 years now, and I feel that I feel that the work here is very. That's one of the things I do to I guess relieve pressure and stress, and I enjoy working with the crew here very much. And this great community service. Anyway, we have been talking about stress at the workplace, and I have had the opportunity to interview 2 professionals who are familiar with the insidious chronic type of stress at their particular profession. And I hope that you have enjoyed our show, and we look forward to our next production. This is Dr. Vu, and our show is America's Healthcare Crisis. Thank you for watching. Good night.
Someone, have you ever cared? Do you miss someone? Have you ever shared? Do you need someone to always be there when you feel lonesome and deep in despair? Do you need someone to dry up your tears? Do you need someone to always be near? Do you have someone to stay through the years?